Okay, so now that I got the idle set, I'm going to put the air cleaner back on it and go drive it around. However, I'm not a huge fan of not having control over the ignition timing with the EFI system, because we can just change it at the press of a button. So I think I'm going to recommend that we go with a we go with a different distributor setup instead of the HEI, because I really do like having timing control at my fingertips.
My name is Pete, and welcome to my garage.
Now, one of the best things about these FiTech systems, or any fuel injection system there is the ability to control the ignition timing electronically. Now, the way this was set up, they ran it on fuel only and left the timing to be controlled by a mechanical distributor that has centrifugal advance and vacuum advance. You can see the vacuum canister right there. And underneath the cap, we're going to have our centrifugal advance weights and bushings and everything. That's fine and dandy. However, we want to take advantage of what this fuel injection system has to offer, or else we wasted about half the money, because it's only doing half of what it's capable of doing. I checked the timing, and our idle timing sitting at about 22 degrees. And then all-in timing, once I rev it up, after about 3,000 RPMs, I was seeing about 44 or about 42 to 44 degrees of timing, which is way too much. If anybody's ever done any small block, Chevy small block work, the 22 degree or the 44 degrees of timing is way more than this thing can take total at wide open throttle. And whenever I checked that timing, I disconnected my vacuum advance there, so therefore there was no vacuum on there adding advance. And so that was legit all-in timing, because once you're wide open throttle, you have no vacuum because your throttle blades are wide open. We're going to make this thing control, the FiTech control the timing. So that's one of the benefits. In order to do this, you cannot use a regular distributor. You have to use, or an HEI distributor. You have to install a regular style distributor, and I'm going to install one that has the mag pickup. So we purchased this one's already an MSD Billet HEI distributor, but we ended up purchasing an MSD Billet distributor that has the magnetic pickup to signal the FiTech. So the distributor signals the FiTech and gives it its RPM signal and cam signal off of there. So I will need to disconnect my wire that goes to the FiTech off of this tack signal. So we have a tack signal right there where they've scotch locked, which I don't care for. We're going to have to rewire this to where that's not in play there. And instead, we are going to use the tack signal off of the distributor, which, let's see where my connector is. It's right here on the FiTech. This is my connector for that on the FiTech. This is going to connect to the distributor. Now, then the FiTech is going to make the determination based on our inputs into the computer screen there on how much timing it wants to, when to pulse the coil. And that signal comes off of this connector right here, and I believe it's this black wire. You can see it's not used right there, and it says coil. So I am going to have to run this black wire back through this conduit over to the coil, or I was going to mount the coil somewhere over there. I might just run it with the wiring that runs down over here. It's kind of hidden underneath these hoses, and therefore I can hook up to there, and I won't have to go all the way around the engine, because I will have power wires and everything coming off. So I can run directly to the FiTech controls that coil. However, I will end up losing my tack signal wire to the dash if I just do that. in order to retain our tack signal, we're going to use this MSD Digital 6AL box, which also gives us multiple sparks and everything like that, which is, I'm pretty sure that's what MSD stands for, multiple spark discharge. And so we're going to use this box because it also has a tachometer output on it, and therefore I'm going to wire that into the tach so the dash gauges read correctly. And I think the place to mount this is going to be right up here on the firewall. That'll be a nice clean installation right there for that box. And I think the best course of action here is I'm going to use some riv nuts. And I will show you how we're going to do that so we can just bolt that thing to the firewall kind of like that. But I'm not going to use like self-tapping sheet metal screws or anything, because the MSD box, it doesn't like vibrations. So in order to get rid of the vibrations, I'm going to mount that on some standoffs right here. So these rubber isolators, they're going to screw into some rivet nuts that I'm going to put into the firewall right there. So I need to make sure I'm really careful when I drill my holes that I don't drill too far. But the nice thing about riv nuts is I don't have to have access to the other side of this in order to do it. And this has a vintage air system and everything right there. This is sealed off and everything. But I'm just going to drill 4 holes right there and install the rib nuts to mount my 6AL box. All right, so we're going to mount this up here on this firewall. All right, if you've ever used a riv nut or a rivet nut, you'll know what I'm talking about. However, it is nice that we don't have to get access to the other side of the firewall, because we can install an insert like this. So we start off with a little insert that looks something like this. We drill a hole, and then we insert it into that hole, and then we use this special rivet gun that pulls this tight on the back side, and now we have a nice threaded hole that's not just as thick as that sheet metal, it's thicker, and we get more thread penetration in there. So it's not like we're just running a self-tapping screw through the firewall. We're going to have a nice mounting point. And you can see on this nice fan shroud that this customer has, you know, they actually use these rivet nuts in this plastic for that fan shroud. It's a good way to do this and have a clean installation. And on a car like that, we want a clean installation. So I want to go fairly slow, because if I drill too far, I can damage something on the other side of the firewall. All right, just barely got in there. Now that hole is not big enough for this rib nut yet. I actually need to go slightly bigger than 1/4 inch. So I'm actually going to use this unit bit right here, because the next size bigger than 1/4 inch according to this is 5/16. And I noticed that whenever I did my practice hole, that I was able to go almost as big as that 5/16 and still get a good bite on it. So for example, here's a 1/4 inch drill bit. I'll enlarge this just a little bit. Now notice my rib nut does not fit in there yet. I need to make that just a tiny bit bigger. Not much. Oh, you see right there. Now on this gun, there's an insert right here that screws in, and it's reverse thread, just to let you know. And this gun comes with a little wrench right there. You get the wrench, and like I said, reverse thread, so I'll tighten it up. And you got to kind of hold this little knob at the back side. Okay, so what that's going to do is pull on this rivet nut right here. It's going to swell it out in the back side. Now you can only go about 1 pump on this thing, or maybe 1.5 pumps, but don't pull too hard because it'll end up breaking the end off of the tool right there. So we're going to install it there. Now you can see I got threads in there, which is great. However, those threads are not even the correct threads for this application. So the threads on the MSD box, these are number 10 by 32, I believe, and these are 10 by 24. So those aren't going to necessarily thread in. It starts, but then it doesn't work because it's not the right thread pitch. Although I wonder if I just tap it before, it'll give me, so it's going to cut finer threads in there. The problem is you got to make sure you got this thing tight enough in there, but not too tight, because you don't want to ruin, or you don't want it to spin inside of there, because then they're really tough. You got to drill out the rib nut. All right. So I'm going to run it in there pretty good. All right, does our standoff screw into that? Yes, it does. There we go. Boom, we got one in there. Now I just got to do the next three. Verify my alignment. Oh yeah, it's gonna be good. All right, now I just got to put the standoffs, the rubber standoffs in there, the isolators. Just make sure they thread in there nice and easy. That one's good. There we go. I've installed one of these before on the inside of the car on the passenger floorboard. The only problem is if you do that, then you got to run all the wires through, and there really isn't as much room as they think on the inside of the car. All right, these are just Phillips screws right here. We're going to hold that to the standoffs. Give ourselves a nice clean installation here. Clean car needs a clean installation. I thought about flipping the thing upside down so the connector's over there, but I think it'll look better if all the, the words and everything are right side up. Now you can see this harness here is pretty good size. Let me just plug this in. If you're running an 8-cylinder like this, you leave both of these loops connected. If you clip one of them, it's for a 6-cylinder. Clip both, it's for a 4-cylinder. All right, we'll do that. And then we're going to run these wires down underneath and along this. And I'm going to put it in some looms so it's going to look nice. Now, onto the distributor. Okay, now that we have our ignition box mounted, we still have to wire it, but also we have to put our distributor in. Before I wire up that box, I want to get the distributor and the ignition coil all put in. Now, this is the MSD Pro Billet distributor, and it does have centrifugal advance weights in it, so it has mechanical advance in it. However, one thing you have to do if you are going to install it on something that's going to control the timing is you have to lock out that centrifugal or mechanical advance in the distributor. Follow along and I will show you how you lock out this distributor. Okay, the first step with your billet distributor is you're going to have to remove the cap. And you just put a Phillips screwdriver in there, and if you push down and turn, that removes that one. Remove it from the other side. Bam. Our cap is released. Pretty simple there. Now you can see in here, here's our magnetic pickup under our rotor here. So this is our rotor. We're going to go ahead and remove the screws for the rotor. Alright, once that's set aside, you can see what we got going on here. Here's our weights, and as our weights fly open, as this distributor spins faster and faster, the springs determine how quickly this will come in. Underneath this lock nut, there's a stop bushing, and we're going fully digital, and we're going to use the FiTech to control that. So we need to lock this out to where there is no advance or anything. So what we do is we need to take the shaft out, take off all these weights and everything, and then when the shaft's out, we flip this piece over right here, because this piece in the middle is part of the shaft. It's welded to the shaft. And therefore, when we flip this over about 180 degrees, then it's completely locked out. So, first things first, I need to pull these weights off and springs. And you can do this with just a pair of needle nose. Alright, get off of there. Okay. Little bushing. We'll remove those. These we don't need anymore. Throw them away. Or keep them. I can't throw anything away, so keep everything. Okay, now we can remove the weights. So we don't need those anymore. So the weights are removed, and now you can see how much advance there is in this thing. If I remove this nut. So we've got that disconnected. However, the shaft won't go up because it's being held in. Now I'm not actually clamping this in the vise. I'm just going to set it down right there, and I don't want to damage this gear because it could damage the camshaft if that gear is damaged. I just want to hold this up there so I could actually punch this through with a hammer and a punch. So get a suitable punch. And we'll just knock this through.
Make sure you don't lose the roll pin. That's why I kind of got the rag underneath it too. So if I lift up the shaft just a little bit more, and you can see the amount that it can move inside there. And then I just rotate this around. I drop the shaft back down into that little hole. There we go. Now I got it in that little hole. And then we can lock it down with the nut. There was a little washer in there too. I just got to tighten that up, and then I got to put the roll pin back in. There's my roll pin. Now you want to make sure you don't damage those teeth. Looks like my holes line up. Alright, now I'm back in. Our distributor is locked out. I just got to tighten that up. And so all the timing is going to be controlled by our FiTech computer now. We're locked down. That means our shaft that's driven by our camshaft down here is locked completely to the part where our rotor connects. So now we can reattach our rotor. Now notice there's a square and a round hole up here. The square hole lines up with this square side. And we can get this thing screwed down. So we should now have very precise timing control at the push of a button with our fingers versus having to get out and set the timing once we set the initial timing on this. Now they do make a phaseable rotor, so you can phase it just a little bit and everything to try to get it set up perfectly on some of these EFI systems. But to be honest with you, I've done a few of them without that, and they work perfectly fine. Haven't run into any problems. So now that we have our distributor locked out, we need to replace it, or replace our HEI distributor with our Pro Billet distributor right here. That's not HEI style. So one thing we need to do is we need to mark where this distributor is so we can drop that one into the motor. Okay. Now, one thing I don't like about these big cap HEI distributors, especially on some of these older cars that didn't originally have an HEI, this wire, I mean, it's so close to the firewall back here. So that's a nice thing about this small cap distributor I'm about to put on it. It really gives us a lot more room at the firewall. So I got all the spark plug wires off. Okay, we'll just seal that off so we don't have to worry about our ported vacuum right there. And we will disconnect. Let's see. Here is our battery positive voltage, or our ignition voltage that goes to the to our distributor. Actually, we are going to run this wire over to our MSD Digital 6A L box now. This right here is our tax signal. So also, since we are going to be using our 2-wire connection right here to our FiTech off of our new distributor, we don't need this one jumper wire right here that runs over to our connection all the way over there. Since now we are going to actually be using the FiTech's connection over there to control our box that's over there. However, we do still need this wire that runs to the inside of the car, because that runs the tachometer on the dash. So that wire will be tying into the tach wire on the MSD box over there.
Crazy stuff. So I need to get our cap off. So this one has 4 things to take off. All right, so it is pointing pretty much to the number 1 cylinder. I'm going to drop in my new one to where the rotor is facing the same thing. Notice it's aiming directly straight at my OL right here, Chevrolet. Loosen up the distributor hold down. Okay, that loosened up pretty easy. All right, I'm going to pull the distributor up. So the nice thing is I don't have to worry about the vacuum advance or any of that now, because we can program all that in with the push of the button on the handheld. All right, don't forget the distributor gasket. This is going to go up all the way up there, and they supply some Lucas gear lubricant to put on your gear here. So just coat that gear. Okay, you don't want that to run dry. This stuff's pretty slick. And I'm going to drop this distributor in. So as it drops down, it turns a little bit. All right, I want the wiring harness over here because it's going to plug into this part of the FiTech right there. It's not all the way down yet. And it's aiming about where I want it. Problem is, I'm going to have to bump the starter over to get it to go all the way down and drop into the oil pump drive shaft. All right, it dropped right in. So now I just got to drop on my hold down clamp. The new distributor body is so much smaller, it makes access to this so much easier. Okay, that's locked down. Looking good. Now we can throw our cap on. Okay, now as far as wiring this up, getting it to the EFI system is super easy. As you can see right here, we have our pickup wires, and look at that, we have our spot that it hooks to. Now, this is directional. You can see there's 2 tabs right here on the corners. So now we have our connection at the EFI system. Now we no longer need our TAC connection right here that goes to the EFI system, so this wire can go bye-bye. Because it ran all the way around. They got the TAC connection from all the way over on that connector. It's in this wiring right here, and I believe it's this one wire. Oh, there's 2 wires now. I wonder what the other one is. Let's see. Our blue one right there is TAC. And that's TAC in, not TAC out. And what was the white wire? Oh, that's the key on signal. All right, that's the main, hey, your key's on, turn on the FiTech signal. All that's really left is to hook up our coil, which is pretty simple. We just have to find a nice place to mount it, which should be pretty easy because now our firewall area, look, we even got a grommet there that's not even in use. Our firewall area has been really cleaned up because our distributor is much smaller. That cap is much smaller. It just, I don't know, I think it really makes it look better. But we also, like I said, still have to mount our coil when that one comes. We'll get to wiring it here next. Okay, with the MSD box, You also get this assortment of grommet, extensions, little pigtails, terminals, everything like that. However, we pretty much don't need any of that for our application, so it's gone. None of the stuff they supply really does us any good in this situation. So, things that we need to hook up as far as hooking this up. We have our big positive and negative cables that are going to go directly to our battery right here. Our battery's right there. Boom. Those hook up to there. Pretty simple. Unfortunately, they're just a little bit long. Man, I'm going to have to shorten them. I was hoping I didn't have to shorten them, but I guess I do. There's a smaller gauge red wire that goes to this, and this smaller gauge red wire is the ignition, basically a turn-on wire. Now I need to turn this on to a circuit that is energized while cranking and with the ignition on. A lot of circuits, they turn off whenever you're cranking. So make sure this is connected to one of those circuits. A great source of this circuit is going to be the original distributor power wire circuit. So I'm going to route this up over this. Now, make sure you don't have an old school ballast resistor in there. That's going to screw you up. But I'm going to run this wire up through here, and I'm going to hide it in there and run that wire up through there. Same thing with another one of my wires. The gray wire on this system is actually our tachometer output. And this is one of the reasons why we went with this box, is because we can still have our factory tachometer on the dash work, and we can still see our RPMs through that. So I'm going to route that along with this red wire behind this, up through this, and hide it, kind of in that. And because our original tachometer wire is back here, the same as our power wire, that's where these two connections are going to be made. And I get to get rid of this other white wire that runs around. So that's good. I get to get rid of some of that. This white wire right here is going to be our ignition coil trigger wire that was originally triggered by the points if you ran a point style distributor on one of these. However, we're not running points. However, we are controlling it with the FiTech. And this white wire is going to connect to this black wire right here that says coil. So that's our coil trigger right there. Bam. So we used up all the connections on this except for this one right here so far. And these wires right here are the ones that go to the coil, the actual coil itself, the ignition coil. And that is the orange and black wire. I don't have my ignition coil mounted yet, so I'll save that until I get that mounted. But I can hook up these other wires and we'll be good to go. And then all I have to do is whenever I hook up the coil is just hook this to the positive and negative on the coil. So I got to tidy up this wiring, clean it all up, and I guess cue a time lapse or something. Now, just need to put my spark plug wires on. I got it all wired up other than our coil right here. Well, I'm going to have to shorten those once I get the coil mounted and figure out where I'm going to do it. So now I just need to get my spark plug wires on my distributor here. starting off with number 1. There we go, number 1. Okay, so it's still a super clean EFI install. Just got to get the coil on and we're good to go now that we got the spark plug wires on. Now I just need to mount my coil here. Now one problem I am going to have is that this MSD coil has a female terminal on the inside of this thing, and our cap looks like a spark plug wire terminal, or they call it an HEI style. So what I need to do is I need to make a spark plug wire to go from our coil over to our cap on our distributor. And the MSD wires that you can get, you either got to buy an entire kit that's like $110, or I picked up this kit from Excel. It's got a red wire, so it kind of matches those. And it comes with different ends I can crimp it on. This thing was like $17 from the parts store. So this should work for me. I can take the one end right here. You can see. Comes with a couple different styles of ends, and I can obviously shorten this wire. It's 60 inches long. However, this end right here is going to is going to go onto my distributor cap. Snaps on, so that's good. Snaps on really good. Okay, and then I can make, it's got a bunch of different kinds of boots for the other end. And they call this like a point style right here. And I've got this end right here that fits inside of my coil. So that's the end I need for the inside the coil. And it looks like I can use this boot right here to go over to connect it on. And then I should be able to have this on there. So now I at least have a wire, because the original HEI style distributor did not it had the coil mounted on the top, so you didn't have to have a wire. With this style of coil, you should not mount it. This MSD Blaster2 has oil inside of it, and you shouldn't mount it sideways because I hear that they leak. So I am going to mount it vertically. And I'm thinking back here on this firewall piece right there, I can probably get it mounted vertically, and I'll install a couple of rib nuts on the bracket right there. So I'm going to mark it, drill it, and go, just like I did for our ignition box. Just not a lot of places that I can really install it I think will look good. And then this is a good spot right there. I think that'll look nice. I'll be able to get the wiring all tidy and everything, because this wire right here, all I have to do is shorten it up, and I'm going to route it underneath, so you won't hardly even see that wire come underneath. And it'll connect to my two terminals right here on our coil. So I just need to mark my holes right here where I'm going to put this, and this is kind of adjustable. I'll mark my couple holes right there and install it. I'll do one of those, and then I'll put the other one in.
After I drill that, yeah, it's painful drilling into somebody's firewall, that's for sure. All right, coil wire terminals are on there. I just have to make my spark plug wire. That also goes on there. And load up the bracket. So I do need to make this coil wire specific length to run down here to the coil. And I will mark it so I can cut it. Cut it right there. Then I just have to strip off the insulation so that I can fold over the wire core. Alright, squeeze this boot on and push the wire through. Alright, so once you get it stripped about 5/8 of an inch on the core, making sure you don't damage the core, what you're going to do is you're going to fold it over. And so that part is resting on the actual crimp right here. So then all I got to do is crimp this down so it doesn't go anywhere. A nice tight crimp. It says it's a 7 or 8 millimeter crimp. Let's see. Oh yeah. So that should be nice and tight. And all I got to do is pull it back through the boot. Hopefully. Say all I have to do. It's kind of a tough pull. I'm kind of twisting as I pull it in. So now, this is sticking out. That should connect to my coil. And then this should go over to our distributor cap. Okay, we are on the coil there. Over to our cap. Now all I have to do is shorten up these wires. All right, so now I've got my wires going down to the coil and the coil mounted solidly. Oh yeah. Huh. Forgot I haven't hooked up my power and ground yet. Don't. Now all I got to do is set my distributor base timing correctly
to where it matches what's in the FiTech. So in order to do that, I had to find perfect top dead center and mark it on the balancer. On this one right here, there was no top dead center mark on the balancer, at least that was correct or anywhere even in the ballpark. So I ended up having to make a mark for that. So therefore I was able to get this thing dialed in. Now, my timing light that I have hooked up has a dial on the back that I can adjust the timing right there to where if I'm at my 0 mark on the balancer down there, my timing light should match that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you in the FiTech what we got. Under Go EFI Initial Setup right here, you can go to Ignition Setup. Now you can see distributor base timing. I put the distributor in right at 0 on my base timing. Now if you have other vehicles like a Ford or something like that that call for say 4 degrees of base timing, you can do all that. I put it in at 0. And then locked spark adjust. I'm going to put it at, I put it at 13 degrees. It defaults at 12.8. That's close enough. And then what you can do is you can go over here, click right, and you can hit locked, and you can hit that and send it to the ECU. So when I start this up, it should be locked at 13 degrees of timing. So then I set my timing light to 13 degrees. You can see right there, it's 13 degrees. And whenever I check my timing down at the balancer there, it should flash at 0 because I have this at 13 degrees. That should flash 0. If it doesn't, then I turn my distributor. Until I line up with 0 right there. So my distributor would be synced with the FiTech at that time. Once all that is finished, then I do the VR drift at 4,000. I rev it up to 4,000 RPMs and hold it there. And then I see what the timing, does it drift off of the set point of say 13 degrees. And then I see what the difference is. And then I can tell it, hey, it drifts 4 degrees, and I can put 4 degrees, and therefore it'll compensate for any kind of mechanical drift that it has. And then we're set up as far as our distributor. All right, we'll start it up. See my tack works down there. All right, I'm set at 13 degrees right there, and I can see my dot right through that hole down there. See it? So we are at about 13 degrees. That's good. So my distributor is phased correctly. Throttle response feels nice and crisp. Once this thing warms up, then I'm going to make sure that our timing matches at our 4,000 RPMs. All right, go ahead. We're about 37. What did it say on the thing? 39.8. All right. So it drifted 2 degrees. So it actually drifted 2 degrees. Okay, so on there it said we were at 39.8 degrees. We were actually reading 37. So it had 2 degrees of drift, so I'm going to put 2 degrees of drift into the handheld. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to initial setup, ignition setup. Now, The VR drift at 4,000 was 2 degrees. Make sure every time you hit the button there to send it to the ECM. We're going to go to the dashboard again. We'll go ahead and key off until it kills power. Alright, so now after we start it, we'll see if it matches again. Okay, let's go ahead and start it up, and then we'll go back to 4,000 after it runs for a second. I might need to back off the startup timing a little bit. We should get 39. It was reading 39. All right, now I just got to go drive it and dial in my timing to see what I like, or what the engine likes and everything. Really, the best way to do it's on a dyno, but we know a small block Chevys usually like 34 to 36 degrees of timing, somewhere around there at wide open throttle, and see what it likes for idle, and we'll mix it around everything in between. All right, let's get our timing light off of here, get our air cleaner on it, and we are set.